Hey YouTube, today we're going to be working on this massive ficus. It's actually going to be part one of a two-part series. This tree was acquired not too long ago, and oddly enough, there's a Green Island Ficus on top of a Ficus benjamina. So today we'll be removing this and planting it over a rock. Hey everybody, we have a big challenge in front of us today. We'll be working on this massive ficus. Before we start though, I have another challenge for you guys. My son, who takes care of the YouTube channel, has told me that if I can increase the number of my subscribers up to 100,000, he's going to pay for a trip to Japan for the two of us. And once we get there, we're going to have some wild content. We'll be traveling through Japanese bonsai nurseries, and you'll see some really incredible things. So talk to your friends, try to find some more subscribers so I can increase that to 100,000. Okay, now today we're going to be working on this ficus, but oddly enough, when it was purchased, there's a little surprise inside. It looks like a little bird's nest almost. But the former owner, when he cut off the top, actually, I think to hide the scar, planted another ficus, but not the same species. He planted a Green Island Ficus on top of a Ficus benjamina, which I'm not too crazy about that concept. So today I'm going to remove it and see how what we can do with this tree. I think we're actually going to plant it on a rock. Okay, so that's what the project is for today. At another time, I'll be working on the main tree, and we'll see what we can do with that. So, since I didn't do it, I have to see what's going on here. So we'll be removing this sphagnum moss and seeing what we can find under there. There's some already. I thought I would find some. There's some wire holding on the other tree, so we'll cut that off. We want to liberate the Green Island Ficus from the trunk of the Ficus benjamina without harming too many roots. I'd like to leave the roots as long as possible so that if we do plant it over a rock, I'll be able to have long roots to drape down in the fissures of the rock. Now there are here's a big root going into the ground, so we'll have to get this root out here. I think it's actually going in quite deeply. It's coming out. There we are. This one is freed. We just have to keep it wet, so we'll spray it a bit here while we're working. Ficus are fun trees to work on because you can actually remove quite a few roots and they'll survive it. So here we go. Get some of the wire off of this and see what it looks like. Okay, well, this here is just what I thought it would be. It looks like it's a cascading tree, so we're going to take advantage of that. We're going to find an interesting rock. Wherever I go, I always try to collect a few rocks, and we'll try to match it off to the rock. We're going to train the roots down. Just want to trim it a little bit so we can see it a little bit better. The challenge is always to find the appropriate rock. You have to have a lot of them, and you have to try to match it up with the roots of the tree. So sometimes you have to have quite a few, and you play around with it until you find the appropriate sized rock. There's one branch there that I didn't like the way it was moving, so we'll bring it over here to fill in that empty space. Okay, so here we are. Now, this is only a preliminary cut. Probably once it's on the rock, I'll be removing some other branches. But for now, this is what it's going to look like on the rock. So, okay, the next challenge is finding a rock. We'll also maybe take this ficus off the table so you'll be able to concentrate on what I'm doing here. Now, next step is choosing the appropriate rock. This tree was trained into sort of a cascading style, and we want to keep that vibe going, okay? So whenever you're trying to match a tree and a rock, it's really hard to harmonize the two of them. You need a lot of rocks. So here's some from my myriad collection of rocks. They come from everywhere. Let's look at the tree on this one first. This one here is a rock from China. The only thing is, I think if it stays wet, it might degrade a bit, and there's no real good pocket. If I put it on this side, I'd be hiding the interesting part of the rock, and we'd see the back of the tree. So we're going to eliminate this white rock, which I really didn't want anyway because it's too soft. I want a rock with this very hard. On the Mohs scale, it should be at least a 6 or 7. Now this is an interesting rock. It comes from in Quebec here, okay, from a river in Quebec, and it has a bit of a pocket right here where we could put the tree. But the trouble is, it doesn't have any good channels for the roots. Now, it has a channel here, but this is the prettiest part of the rock, and we would be hiding it if we planted the tree there. You have to take into consideration the aesthetics of the rock also, and it just wouldn't suit it because you'd be hiding the best part of this rock. So that's out of the question. Now here is a slightly smaller rock. We could sit it. It's sort of like a mesa, you know, in the southwest. And we do have a fissure here that we could train the roots down. But all in all, I don't know. The tree, it doesn't excite me. It just looks like a tree sitting on a big square slab of stone. And as the roots grow over it, you won't even see the stone very much. There's no saddle also for the tree to sit on. It doesn't excite me. No. So let's forget about that. Okay, now here's one that we could have a nice fissure here. And we could actually, there's no natural space to plant a tree. We can try it the other way, this rock. Okay. Here again, there's no natural saddle that I could put the tree on, and I don't like to have trees sitting on top of a rock. It just looks too artificial. Okay, so that one's eliminated. Okay. We'll go to these two smaller rocks. Both of them came from Lake Canandaigua, which is in the Finger Lakes region in upper New York State. Now this one's interesting, okay? This one is real pretty, and I think we could sit the rock right here, the tree right here on the rock, and bring it over. The only thing is, the rock is short, so the cascading branch would, from the get-go, would be sitting almost on top of the ground. That interests me less because I wanted to emphasize the cascading aspect of this ficus. Although the rock is well suited to the tree, I just think it's too small. Okay. This also is another rock from Lake Canandaigua, but there's no natural way of sitting it. I could put it on this rock, but I'd have to make a cement base or cut the base to sit it on the rock. And if I cut it, it's going to be too short. So I think I'm going to pass this one over. So now I have two other rocks, this one here and this one here. These came from far away. This one here and this one here came from Vancouver Island. And they're actually very, very similar to the Ying Tak stones from southern China. They actually, a few 100 million years ago, they were found in the same place. And gradually the continents broke up, and one part floated up to Canada off of the Canadian coast, and the other part landed up in southern China. So these rocks are really exciting, okay? I didn't collect them myself. I bought them from a stone collector there. This one here, I bought them actually as gongshi, as Chinese scholar stones, but I don't think they're good enough to be a good gongshi. Now this is a flat part of the stone here. I could plant the tree there, although it's pretty high up, and train the roots through this fissure, but I think the holes are what make the rock interesting. And this rock doesn't have a good base. So I'm going to try the other one, and we'll see how that one works out. These are very, very hard rocks. They're on the Mohs scale, I think they're like 8 or 9 posted diamonds. And this one here is beautiful. It's a beautiful stone, and it can be set many ways. It could be used this way here. It could be used this way here. Make a really interesting. This one would make a really good suiseki. Okay, yeah, beautiful stones. I paid a lot for them. Yeah, but look at this nice saddle here, and on the perfect side for this tree. So if I could fit the tree right in there and train that root right down the fissures and train these roots, I would say that this tree and this stone are made for each other. I'm sure that this is going to be a marriage made in heaven. So this is the stone I'm going to use. By the way, a good example of a stone planting is this lovely little boxwood right here on a Ying Tak stone. The roots were trained over the Ying Tak stone many, many years ago. You've got a nice little shimpaku at the base. The movement of the tree reaching outwards from the cliff, the stone representing a cliff, is just gorgeous. And a good choice of tokonami oval pot, the same color as the Ying Tak stone. This is a great little planting. Okay, folks, I'm back. If you're wondering about the change of clothing, it's because today is voting day here in Quebec. So I went out and did my duty as a citizen. Okay, so we're back here. Now I'm preparing the keto. Keto is actually, the common name is peat muck. It's made from a combination of peat muck with academa dust and about 25% of long fibrous sphagnum thrown in. So I just added a bit of water to soften it up. It has to be about the consistency of, I'd say, just about like cement. So here it's actually, I put too much water in, so I'm going to add a little bit of academa dust, so I'll be able to harden it off a bit. You have to be careful about when you're adding water. I was a bit too generous, so. Okay, I think it's going to work now. Should be able to make like a tennis-sized ball out of it. This is just about the right consistency here. As you can see, I can make a little balls out of it like that. So that means it's good, okay? So now let's get our rock ready. This is our rock. Now we're going to put a layer of peat muck on the rock because I don't want the roots lying directly on the rock. Roots need to absorb humidity and minerals in the humidity, and it's the soil that keeps it in reserve. So if it's directly on the rock's hard, so there won't be enough nutrients for our plant. Okay, so I'm going to be tying the ficus to the rock. I could anchor it with copper wires, but in almost no time, the tree will really cling to the rock. So I'm just tying the very first piece of rock. Now, to get the peat muck to attach to the rock, your rock has to be moist, at least where you're putting the peat muck. So I've moistened the rock, and now we put a very thin layer of peat muck where we're going to place the plant and the roots. I'll be training the roots down through these fissures. There'll be another layer of this peat muck going over the top, but this bottom layer is very, very important. Don't forget that. Because otherwise, if the roots are just sitting on that hard rock, they can't get up, they can't get any nutrients. Now, we're not covering the nicest part of the rock. We're covering the boring part of the rock. And you don't want to put too much of this peat muck, just a thin layer where the tree and the roots are going to go. Okay, so this is ready. Let's get our tree. As you can see, while I was gone, I kept the roots moist. I wrapped it in a plastic bag. You don't want to leave it sitting there. The roots will dry out and it will die. So, now, we've got the tree. It has a nice flat root system. That's what inspired me to think about putting it on a rock. Usually, I love doing rock plantings, and usually I'll use trees that I've air layered off of other trees because they have very thin, flexible roots. And that's what you need, a tree with thin, flexible roots. So now we're going to get it right in there, in this little saddle. We have to get it in real tight, real tight. And now this long root here in the front, this is the root we're going to train down into this fissure. We have two fissures. We can decide which one. I think the best one would be this one here. So here you can see I'm tucking it into the peat muck right here. Now it's a very hard rock, so the roots will never they'll get big and fat, but they'll never be able to break the rock, which is an advantage to using a rock with a very, very hard texture. Okay, so now once it's on the rock, I have to tie it very, very tightly to the rock. I just want to, here we go. This is one end. Okay, so now we start the tying part. You have to make sure it's nice and it's well placed. And here we go. In the end, I'm going to tuck the roots under the rock also, because the roots, if they're not tucked under the rock, can get very, very strong and push against the bottom of the pot and push the tree off the rock, and I don't want that. So it has to be really, really tight to the rock. Sometimes if the roots don't want to go into the fissures, what I do is I have pieces of cork, and I'll actually stuff the cork into the fissures to block the roots into it. Now that, just cut my cord. It's okay, there we go. Ficus have very strong roots. They're probably one of the best subjects to do rock plantings with. When you travel in Asia, Angkor Thom or even the streets of Hong Kong, you see these tremendous ficus with their roots growing over cliffs and buildings and going through sidewalks even. The roots are so strong. They're literally just so impressive. You really have to make sure it's tight. There we go. Okay, now we'll tie the other end here. Okay, we'll cut off the excess cord here. Okay, just want to tie one last piece of cord to keep it sitting higher up. This cord is butcher's twine. It's pure cotton, so it'll eventually just rot away in a few months. By then the tree should be well attached to the rock. The roots will have grown into place. That's why you want to use a cord that will disintegrate. It has to be pure cotton or jute twine. It can't have any nylon in it. All right. So now that we've got the tree attached to the rock, now we want to work in more keto, cover all the roots with keto. We also want to make sure that the roots don't cover the interesting part of the rock. These streaks of white quartz make the rock look very interesting. So those are features that you want to keep. You don't want to hide any of the best part of your stone. And you really have to press in with your fingers to make sure that that keto soil is in contact with the roots, so the roots will not be sitting in air. The roots will be able to absorb humidity. Very important that there's a tight fit in there. Okay, now we'll get around to the back here. We'll tie the back down right here and put some of the, cover some of this part up here. Cover these roots in the back. The back's not so important. The back, I don't think many people will see, but it still has to be well done. So this is where we're working our soil in. Now, the problem with this peat muck is that it doesn't want to stay on the rock. It falls off. So we'll show you in a few moments a little trick that we use to keep the moss, to keep the soil on the stone. We're almost there. Okay. We might just have one little root that's sticking out. We'll tuck that one in. Now we have two choices. We could keep this tree permanently on the rock above the ground, but ficus like a lot of humidity, and the roots are very, very strong. So I think our best bet with this tree, this rock planting, is actually going to be to put it into a pot. So the roots will grow in bonsai soil in our pot, and that way we'll make sure that the tree will survive. We will train some of the branches downwards and, okay, a bit more. Match them off to the rock better. To keep the peat muck on the rock, we're going to have to resort to moss. We'll hold it on with moss. So let me get a tray of moss here. It's right behind me. Any short moss will do. And what we want to do is remove some of the excess soil from it, because we want to really, it to stick to the keto. And sometimes where the place is very straight, where the rock is really a straight drop to the ground, we might have to pin the moss to the keto. The keto is very sticky, so the moss will stick to it, especially if we really press it into the keto. And one little word of advice here, when you're doing rock plantings, keep the pieces of moss as big as possible. It's like sheets, because that moss, that large sizes of moss will really hold the keto in better. So I'm using a very large piece of moss. So again, you want very, very large pieces. The larger the better. Remove all the old soil, otherwise it won't want to attach itself to the new soil. Now, as I've said in the past, you must remember, moss does not have roots. So we're pushing it into the keto. We're pushing it in there so it'll hold. Now, this will not only hold the keto in place when your rock planting is watered, but also the other advantage to that is that it will keep the roots nice and moist. And ficus love the humidity. They like to have moist roots. Not wet, moist. Here I've got a big piece of moss, and this sheet is so large that I think there's a straight drop in the back here, and the straight drops are very hard to keep the keto on it. So I'm going to use this very long piece here and bring it straight down to the ground. Okay, here we go. Now you really have to mash this moss into the keto so that it will follow every contour of your rock, every single contour, and hold all of this keto in place also. Okay, so we'll need one other piece of moss, or maybe two other pieces here. Now this is just moss that was collected from other trees, and I actually keep it for future transplantings. I grow it in little trays, keep just on one sheet of newspaper, and it grows very well. When I'm watering the bonsai, I'll water the moss. So I always have a supply of moss ready for any emergency. And that, I think, is important too. You always, when you're doing bonsai, you have to be prepared. You always have to have, you know, sort of contingency planning, because there's so much that can go wrong when you're doing bonsai. So you really do have to be ready. And one last piece up here. Is that going to be large enough? I think I'm going to take one larger piece rather than several smaller ones. As I said, the largest pieces I can find, the better it is. You can either use scissors or a little knife to cut all the excess soil from the bottom of the moss. Again, I've mentioned it in past videos. Moss does not have roots, so you don't have to worry about cutting off roots and killing your moss. Roots attach themselves to soil with what are called rhizomes, and that's why you have to really press it in, because there's no roots that are going to grow into this soil. The moss will just be attached to it. Oops. Okay. Sometimes I'll add little ferns, but this rock is not that large, and I don't think ferns would be particularly appropriate because it would take away from the smaller leaves. So I think I'm just going to just keep it this way. I'll just pin on one or two pieces, just show you how to do it. So this here is basically 2mm aluminum wire, and I'll just grab a little piece here and make a little pin like this, little U-shaped pin right there. Okay, you can see it the other way here, and then not too long, because there's not that much keto on the rock, and then you can just pin your moss temporarily. You don't even see it though. And you pin the moss onto the rock so it won't fall off. And press down, it'll hold it. You can put as many of these as you want on your rock, especially where it falls pretty straight. It's a steep drop. There's where the moss risks coming off, so you don't want that. Now I'll put one in the back here where the steep drop is, right here. I generally put them on horizontally. It's a bit too long, this one. The rock is the soil is very shallow here, so I'll cut it a bit shorter just to hold Ah, there we go. Good, 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 good. Okay, now, I think, as I said, the best solution to keeping this tree happy is actually to not, it would grow on the rock, but you just have to water pretty often. And not sure that everybody, especially indoors, wants to do that. So in this case, what we're going to do is put it into a bonsai pot. I'll just clean the muck off the table and go and get some bonsai soil to repot it. I've chosen a pot for the rock planting. As I say, we're going to train the roots down into the soil. So that'll always serve as a reserve of humidity and nutrients for the tree in the future. Now I'm just anchoring some drainage hole covers, just plastic covers that are mesh, and we're attaching it to the bottom of the pot. The other one also. So we're going to turn and turn. You have to make your space the same distance as the hole. So you have to sort of, after a while, you get to judge it pretty well. There's always a flat side to the screening also. So in this case, I feel it out. In fact, I can take off these gloves now, which I find a hindrance, and attach. Now, I don't want the rock to jiggle around in the pot, so I'm actually going to put a couple of anchoring wires through the pot so I can hold the rock in place. Sometimes, if it's really unsolid, if it's a really, if it's unstable, if it's a high rock, sometimes I'll even drill a little hole through the rock and wire it into the rock. But generally it should stay pretty. This one's relatively stable, so it should be pretty good. I like the hollow, going through the bottom of the rock. I think it's pretty cool. It lends an air of mystery to the rock, so that's pretty interesting. Okay, now we're going to put a tiny bit of coarse in the bottom, not too much. The pot's very shallow, so we just maybe want 1 granule deep, not very much at all. We set the rock in the tray. Now, a really important thing to remember is you don't want to center the rock. In this case, visually, to balance it, I'm going to move the rock to the far end of the pot, to the far left, and I want it leaning slightly forward also. So, here, I've just leaned it forward, tucking the roots into the pot. In the back, it's almost touching the back of the pot. That's okay. That's fine. That doesn't bother me at all. That's okay. Now, we're going to try to find a way to anchor it so it's not going to move. I've attached the wire over a little ledge in this rock so it'll hold it. Now, this one here, I will go through the center, again using that little ledge here. And attach at the base of my rock right here. Okay. So now we tuck our roots in. If they don't want to stay, I can actually use some of the excess wire to tuck them in, hold them in place. Tuck them all underground here. Okay, so now we just have to add our finer, our medium size potting mixture. Now ficus just love growing in akadama. So this is about 70% akadama from Japan, and about the 30% is pumice. We actually use a pumice that comes from France that's called chabasai, but you can use any pumice at all. Okay, so now we're just putting some in here. Now you don't want to hide the base of your stone, and we want it to be tilted slightly forward toward the viewer. So when I add some more medium size, I will tilt it forward. Here we go. Tuck some underneath. There we go. So now it's moving forward. Just want to tuck that bonsai soil around the roots, although there's only 2. The rest are under the peat muck. The peat muck will serve as a wick. They'll follow the peat muck down into this akadama in no time. Within a few weeks, the akadama will start filling in with the ficus roots. So we don't have to worry about that. Now I might just put a little bit of moss at the base to form a continuity. So I'll just wet this. Now this wetting is just purely aesthetic, and so the moss will attach to it. As soon as this is, as soon as I'm finished, I will put it in a tray of water and let up to the rim of the pot and let it soak there for about 15 minutes to make sure that all the roots are well wetted down. As I said, I just want to make a little bit of continuity here. So I will put a little bit of moss at the base, and after that, we'll be all finished. You never want to cover up the bare parts of the stone. Those are the interesting parts. But I just want it to look natural, as if the rock has, the moss is growing down the rock and into the soil lower down. Just a little bit here. I don't want to cover this beautiful rock with moss. It's just too beautiful. We're not going to touch the beautiful parts of the rock. We just leave them as is. Final placement. Now the tree is not perfectly wired. All the new growth is sticking up in the air. So that's another future project, is to wire it down to its new position. All of these have to be wired down. That's a job. We're not going to do that today, but you will see it probably in the future. You'll be able to follow its progress. I'll take away the tools, and I think this is it, folks. So I hope you enjoyed this little demonstration on how to do a ficus rock planting. And don't forget that my next video will be working on that humongous ficus over here, and transforming it into a really cool looking bonsai. There's a lot to do on that ficus, but I think you'd see some major changes when I work on it. So thank you very much, folks, and we'll see you for the next video.